King of Kings.
It's time for the Wrestling Observer Extra.
For real this time.
With Dave Meltzer, right here on The Law. Live audio wrestling.
He's totally on the phone. It's true. No, we have
Yes, it's not a swerve.
We're serious.
It's not a swerve.
Not a Russo swerve.
Not a swerve.
Dave Meltzer!
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great.
All right, Dave, we have been chattering on the show, of course. We're going to get right to it here. This week on Raw, we had the big comeback of Vince McMahon, and it did work for ratings. He was excellent. He did a great job on the show. Longevity, though, as Vince as a character, have you heard anything, how long he'll just be appearing on TV?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure the original plan was one show. But you know how the things are. The rating was so good that there's going to be incredible pressure on him, especially because perhaps this week with the Slammies, the rating will stay up to a degree. But eventually we know the ratings are going to fall back to where they were. And now they kind of have this thing where, hey, if we bring back Vince, the ratings go up. The only problem is that you also know that that's a lot of diminishing returns. If he's a regular character, then he's not a special character. And, he hadn't been on for a year. And between that, I think that the angle at the end of the pay-per-view, I think that helped. And because I think there was curiosity at the beginning of the show. And then, you put Roman Reigns in this situation where it's basically retire or win the championship. So people knew they were getting a big main event, and they stuck with the third hour, which, of course, they haven't been doing since football started.
Now, sticking with that third hour in this whole scenario of Reigns winning the title, Dave, again, how much was this thought out in advance? Because I, again, get the feeling that this was something they just kind of came up with in the last little while.
As far as when and everything, I couldn't really tell you. Obviously, the Reigns thing was going to happen. It was just a question of when. It was originally going to be Survivor Series,
right?
And then when they made the call not to do Survivor Series, they probably thought, debated on the pay-per-view, the Royal Rumble, or the TV after. I'm guessing. I don't actually know, but I think that it would be one of those three things logically, and they decided to go. If you go with the TV in the sense that it's the coronation of, this is like the real coronation of a new era.
Yeah.
So get as many eyeballs as possible on that. Usually I would want the title change to be on a pay-per-view, but in an instance like this, I can actually see the logic of doing it the way they did, and it worked. It worked great.
Now, do you feel that this is leading to a program with Triple H for WrestleMania?
Well, for sure it's leading to a program with Triple H. It's either going to be Rumble or Mania. I would think maybe Rumble. For Triple H, and then somebody big at Mania, whether that's Lesnar, Cena, I don't know, or maybe somebody else. They don't have a heel ready, and it could be Triple H. But my feeling is that Triple H going for the championship doesn't. I don't know if that's the right thing to do at a WrestleMania match. But on the flip side, Triple H had two straight WrestleMania opponents fall out with The Rock and Seth Rollins. So, and if he's going to do it, maybe that is the day to do it.
Brock was at a house show. He was working Alberto Del Rio. What about? Do we see Brock tomorrow night on television, or are the Slammies just holding up tomorrow?
All I know is that he's at the first show that he's supposed to be back for TV is in 2 weeks, I believe. It's a New Orleans show. He could be. It's Minneapolis, so if there's a city to put him in as a surprise, that would be it. But I haven't heard that he's there.
Have you heard any surprises for tomorrow night, considering it is the Slammies?
Just Flair, who's been on already. I just know he's going there, but as far as no, maybe Rollins. Actually, I've heard rumblings of Rollins being there. But obviously there's limited what he can do, but I have heard that. I don't know that he's going to be there, but I have heard that one.
Well, I guess he could be accepting a Slammy,
right?
If he does win, they could cart him out there, though. It might be best to just leave him off TV.
Yeah.
Well, they could be doing, because one year they thought Daniel Bryan might win an award, and then he didn't because of fan voting, and he was actually backstage, and they never showed him because he didn't win.
Right.
So he could be back there just in case he's voted in on one of these awards, and so it could be that as well.
As far as the return of John Cena goes, yes, he's going to be working house shows, is scheduled for that. As far as coming back to television, though, do you see him potentially being promoted for the SmackDown changeover?
Yeah, I think so, for at least the first week. Yeah, definitely. Definitely, but I would think so. Because my impression is just the first couple weeks of SmackDown, they're going to really load up. Mm-hmm. So I think that's all hands on deck. I wouldn't even be surprised to see Lesnar on one of those shows, although he hasn't been advertised for any of them.
Or what about Vince, maybe perhaps on the SmackDown debut on USA?
I could see him on the first or second week, yeah. Or if nothing else, perhaps Stephanie and Triple H. But whatever it is, because they've got to establish they really need to get off with a bang. So I think the first couple of weeks will be really big, and then after that, they're gonna. It'll be what it'll be. I mean, the other thing I think is I don't know this, but logic just tells you that on the Monday before the debut, so it's January 6th, they should probably end Raw with a big cliffhanger that they're going to settle on Thursday.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Wednesday your time, yeah.
And, after all that goes away, it's all going to be on the back of Mauro Ranallo. Any rumblings in regards to who his partners will be, though, with commentary?
No, I don't think anybody knows, because I've actually asked around, and it's like one of these secrets. So I don't know if they keep Lawler.
That's
Booker?
just so. What? Can you imagine that, Dave? Let's just think about that, though. Mauro Ranallo and Jerry Lawler sitting beside one another doing this commentary.
That would be interesting. You know who else it could be is Daniel Bryan. I mean, I know that they wanted Daniel Bryan in the spot, but the question is, just Daniel Bryan has been kind of not really wanting to do the announcing because I think he still wants to be a wrestler. But I know Daniel Bryan was offered the spot.
Very interesting. Whatever happens, I don't imagine Rich would still be there.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that he may be doing something backstage, but yeah, he seems to be the odd man out.
Yeah, of any, he looks to me like he's the one tomorrow would take his place, and then I could first maybe even just see it being still Booker and Lawler.
I don't think that's the worst idea, and maybe it'll invigorate Lawler too, especially because Moro's going to be doing it in a different way, and I've got to think that they're going to leave Moro. My gut tells me they're going to leave Moro alone at least for a while. I mean, there may come like a month, 2 months down the line, but right away I think they're going to let Moro be Moro, and at that point, I think Lawler maybe it'll invigorate Lawler to not have to play shtick so much, but maybe it won't. I don't know. I mean, there's been, when Lawler was moved to SmackDown, it's kind of like with the JR, thing where you kind of get moved to SmackDown and then you kind of fade away. And I think that that's certainly a possibility at Lawler's age.
It's going to be very interesting who they all put out there to get that done.
I would love to see Corey Graves, but that's just me. I think he's done one hell of a job in NXT.
They would be the best team for sure.
They'd be excellent.
And that might not be the worst idea because why not start anew completely?
Right,
right. I don't think that's out of hand at all. I could see them coming in because I could see new graphics. I mean, I don't know this, but I just could see an overhaul of a lot of things. And Corey Graves is the best announcer that they've got right now. So him and Moro, to me, would be the super team. So yeah, I think that makes all the sense in the world.
But now, do you think they would ever go back to just a strict 2-man team, or would they just have to have 3 guys out there?
You know what? The best thing they could do is that 2-man team would not need a third guy, and a third guy would only distract, not enhance. So I think that's actually the logical move to make.
So it probably won't happen.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, we just jinxed it. We just jinxed it. It's not going to happen. Yeah, exactly.
Let's chat about something that we might see happen, and that is Jerry Lynn return to the ring. A lot of hints there thrown in that Jay Lethal match, using the Cradle Pile Driver to finish. Is Jerry Lynn stepping back in the ring after all these injuries and his retirement tour?
It sure looked like they were doing something but Jerry didn't look like a guy ready to return to the ring. And when he retired, I mean, I remember him saying that, he retired because he just couldn't go anymore. Then again, it's been a couple of years off, and you can, I think that there's always that feeling, well, I can do one more match.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I watched it, I certainly thought that they were building to one match. Either obviously there's something with him, and he wasn't there for no reason. So it's either for one match or he's going to be having a protege, and the protege is going to be the one who goes against Jay Lethal. So I think it's going to be one of those two things.
Interesting. Also, Dave, before we wrap up for this week, I wanted to get some of your thoughts on the passing of Liz Mark. Of course, a major star in the 80s with Atlantis, one of the great high flyer types. He buried in his mask. How will Liz Mark be remembered?
Yeah, Liz Mark was one of the guys who really I would say define the early 80s and mid 80s in Mexico for CMLL. He was like I'd say he was like their Sting. And the thing is that was interesting to me about when we talked about Liz Marcus, it really hit me. Mike Tanay and I were actually talking about this, that all of the 70s guys that were really big in Mexico, they came to California, they came to Texas, so we knew them in the United States. And then in the 90s, pretty much, we saw all the AAA guys and the CMLL guys on television here, and they also came to the United States. But the 80s were like that lost generation where it was like there was this big border between the United States and Mexico, and we really never saw Liz Mark in the United States in any major promotion, but he would have been, he was like a really big star. By the time the AAA thing came, he was still a big star, but he was in his mid-40s by then, and it was kind of more, or early 40s, and it was kind of more the younger generation, and Perro Aguayo was the big legend. And he was Atlantis before Atlantis, I guess was the best way to put it. Atlantis kind of took that spot as the young flyer, but he was an innovator. I mean, a lot of the moves that you see in Lucha Libre and a lot of the style that you see in Lucha Libre with more of the high flying, that really came in CMLL from him. I mean, like Mil Mascaras and some of those guys. I mean, a lot of the guys in the 70s were flyers to a degree, but Liz Mark Moore in the 80s took it to a next level, kind of like what Atlantis did as well. And then, of course, in the 90s with, Ray and those guys, they took it to a completely different level. But he was, Hall of Famer and enduring legend, and shocking because again, it came out of nowhere. And 65, I mean, it's young. And the other thing about it is, he still was wrestling up until, 7-8 years ago because, so it's almost like it feels like he was a very young man.
He had some heart problems, though, no, Dave?
Yes, he did. Yeah, 16 years ago, There was always the rumor he had the heart attack, but he was out for 6 months because of a heart problem.
Right.
So, and he died of a heart attack. So, yeah, that's what it was.
Right. All right, Dave. Well, we look forward to that in The Observer. And what else do you got on top this week?
Probably talk about the UFC show, New Japan building the Tokyo Dome. Maybe this week or next week, we're going to definitely do like that. Well, next week will be the big year in review issue. Mm-hmm. This week I may start the year in review, just talking about what everything looked at like at the beginning of the year and how it's changed and what the next year kind of can look forward to, because a lot of stuff happened that we expected, but my God, was there a lot of stuff in this year that was, you could have never predicted to happen.
Well, all the UFC soars and WWE tanks, really, with their product.
And you got the rise of NXT. Mm-hmm. I mean, who would have ever believed NXT would have drawn 15,000 or 13,000 people and be selling out
that's crazy.
buildings a year ago? And who would have ever thought that Conor McGregor would be what he is a year ago? I mean, it's really, sometimes it moves really slow, but I think this year a lot of stuff moved really fast.
Very much so. All right, look forward to that, and we'll speak with you next week at the same time.
Okay, have a great week.
Great. You too. Dave Meltzer, WrestlingObserver.com is where you can find all his fine work and writings and subscribe to the newsletter, etc. When we come back, we're taking your questions. If you want to call, we do have one caller. We'll get to that when we return. 1-855-591-6876. And, of course, going to the message board. After this on The Law.